Welcome back to the Reidel Law Firm Odyssey channel. Today I'd like to take the chance to talk about the franchise review process that we have, the franchise disclosure document review process, and discuss a bit about what our process is, what our typical project looks like, how we do it, how we can help you, and what to expect in that process. If you are an existing client, you'll probably recognize quite a bit of what I'm going to tell you here, so bear with us. For any prospective clients or folks who are exploring franchising, hopefully this is helpful for you and gives you an idea of what to expect in the process or what to expect from your franchise professional who's assisting you, whether that's a consultant or an attorney or even a broker who's helping you review potential franchise opportunities. So our first item I'd like to chat about is our review, our being the Reidel Law Firm, our review philosophy. And I wanted to contrast this with attorneys or reviewers, whether that's a broker or someone else, who does not have a lot of experience in the franchise industry or has not dealt with franchisors previously. They will typically come to a franchise agreement, a franchise disclosure document, with an attitude to start redlining and to start changing aspects of the franchise agreement, which is fine. That's understandable in a legal perspective. That's what attorneys do, right? Take agreements and chop them up and make them better or revise them for your client. But you have to understand, in the franchise industry, as a general practice, we don't redline documents. It's just not done. If we need to make a modification to a franchise agreement, or if something's been negotiated that will change the franchise agreement, we handle it with an amendment. We don't go in and chop up and redline stuff. That's just a total non-starter. I represent franchisees and franchisors in my practice. If I get something that's redlined, if I get a franchise agreement that's redlined, that's going straight in the trash. Sorry to say that, but it's true. It's a waste of time and effort, and it's total non-starter. So that, if your attorney does it, I'm sorry. They probably haven't dealt with franchisors before, but it's not the industry practice, and that's not the way that we approach it, our review. So our philosophy, contrasting it with that, is we come from a perspective of trying to educate our clients. So educating that potential, that future franchisee about what a franchise disclosure document is, what's in it, what is the franchise agreement, what's in their franchise agreement, and commenting and highlighting their specific obligations, their specific terms. I'll highlight things that I like, I don't like, things I think maybe you can request changes on, things like that. That's going to be our philosophy. That's how we approach it. We don't go in and try to chop up documents, but we are going to lay it out on the table for you and explain it in plain English. Try to walk you through different scenarios on how certain provisions, how certain terms are going to affect you, either now, in the future, or in certain circumstances, and prepare you, right? Prepare you to undertake that franchise opportunity and how to negotiate. So our primary objective is education. Our secondary objective, obviously, is going to be preparing you to negotiate the best deal and walking through that. So I just wanted to explain that from the outset, I think our approach is very typical in the franchise industry from other attorneys that I've worked with and colleagues in the industry here. It's a very collegial bar. We don't, I know quite a few franchise attorneys who represent franchisors only, and then there's some of us who represent both sides, and you'll end up dealing with a lot of them again and again. And we understand where everyone's coming from. We understand ways to modify things the right way and deal with it. So it's not something that a attorney who doesn't have experience in is going to probably be much help in, unfortunately. So that being said, after you retain our services as Reidel Law Firm, what we're going to do is start reading the FDD, reading the FA, going through and commenting and preparing our summary review letter. So after we've read it, our next step is going to be drafting what I call a summary review letter. And that summary review letter is typically going to be between 8 to 10 pages, maybe a little bit longer if there's quite a bit of real estate involved. Usually I'll have more comments than that, or if there's something really unusual with the system. but that's very typical. It's 8 to 10 pages. And what will be within that franchise summary review letter is I'm going to lay out things, commentary. So I'm going to comment on things I like, some things I don't like. I'm going to lay out the key terms to that franchise agreement. So we're going to point out the fees. I'll comment on whether they're typical or not, what I've seen in other similar competitors maybe, or industry-wide. I'll probably comment on the system if it's something unique or something maybe that's a little different. The territory, we'll lay out what your territory is and whether that's something of concern or not. Sometimes it is, sometimes not. Then I'll move into, so a lot of that will be kind of in the FDD notes and commentary. In the franchise agreement commentary and notes, I'm going to lay out and cite the key terms, right? The key provisions that govern your relationship with the franchisor. So this is going to be things like timelines. So timeline to open, timeline to secure real estate, timelines in regards to like default periods and things like that. We'll talk about areas that are very probably typical across the board, but are important to understand: termination provisions and exit strategy, your obligations as a franchisee, what you'll be expected to do and or not do. We'll point out real estate provisions and leasing terms and what you have to prepare for with that lease. We'll also talk about things that probably, if you've never been in franchising, that you're probably not aware of. This would be things like liquidated damages. It's always a real big one that we talk about. The confidentiality clauses, the non-compete clauses. The other big one would be how a franchisor can change the terms of the franchise operations manual. So, and in effect, change the terms of the franchise agreement. So it's not really a term for that, an easy one like confidentiality or non-compete, but that's a very important aspect of signing up for a franchise. You gotta understand that franchise systems evolve. You will be expected to evolve with them, and most of the time you'll be required to evolve with them. If you don't, you're facing termination most likely, and or other fees and damages. So we'll talk about a lot of that. If there's other things in there that I think are unusual, unique, or I just want to comment on, I will point them out to you and prepare you for that. So after we've drafted the summary review letter, then we'll go into scheduling a conference call, or maybe sit down with you. It just depends on where you are and what our schedules are. And at that point, we're going to go over, after you've had a time to read it and make your own comments and get your own questions in order, then we will go over your concerns. We'll go over and answer all of your questions and make sure that you understand the document, make sure that you are aware of your obligations, make sure you don't have any underlying questions or concerns about it. And importantly, we're going to counsel you on how to negotiate with the franchisor. So negotiating with the franchisor, probably it'll seem easy in the time you're doing it. You're probably talking to a sales personnel, sales folks, or an executive who's doing the sales, or franchise director or something. It'll seem easy because they want the deal to get done. And they'll probably tell you, hey, probably won't modify anything, but we'll talk to you, we'll listen to you and go through it. And that's good. That's all. That's expected, and that's okay. But it sounds like it will be easy to bring up topics that you want to negotiate, and generally it's not so easy to actually affect that change or secure that modification of the franchise agreement. So just wanted to state that and prepare folks to negotiate and end up nowhere, right? End up with the same agreement that they disclosed to you at the beginning. That's probably very typical for most folks. But what's important, I tell folks, even if we don't secure some of our changes and you still feel like moving forward with that opportunity, the process is just as important as what maybe you're securing or what you would be asking for. If a franchisor obviously blows you off or dismisses your concerns and your questions just out of hand and doesn't try to convince you or talk you through why they have that position or what's happening, obviously that's a huge red flag, right? There's going to be a greater concern there than if they talked you through it and explained some things to you, but we're still not willing to modify something for you. So I tell folks, even if you don't secure that change, say it's maybe asking for a revised liquidated damages clause, even if we don't secure it, then at least you've talked through it, you understand their position, and you are able to understand how they may deal with you in the future, right? Are they going to dismiss it? Are they going to try to just blow you off and deflect? Or are they going to walk you through point by point and explain their position, explain why your position maybe is unreasonable or not tenable, and make you feel better even if there is no change. So as we're going through your concerns and your questions, we'll also counsel you on how to negotiate that those requests or your concerns and questions within the summary review letter, and prepared to go to the franchisor with that. After we've done our conference call, you'll then be at a point where you'll be prepared. You're going to have your summary review letter. You'll have detailed notes that obviously you'll take during our conference call, and be prepared to address the questions and concerns with the franchisor. Now, we'll discuss in particular during our conference call, and going over your franchise agreement in particular, we will discuss how to approach that franchisor. If I've had experience with them, I may have some insight. In particular, if I haven't, then I can still walk you through. I have a 3-step process basically that I like to use to go through requests with the franchisor and try to get them to agree to that request. Not always successful, but I feel that my 3-step process is a very good tool to start that conversation and lay out everyone's position so that it can be handled in a professional, cordial manner. I've had some questions in the past about whether I can or why don't I typically take lead in negotiating with the franchisor. And I'll just tell you, in our typical franchise package, I will not take lead with you and be negotiating directly with the franchisor on your behalf. We can add that into your specific franchise package, review package that is. But the reason I don't do that is whenever you come to a franchise attorney, you come to Reidel Law Firm, you've probably already built rapport and you've built a business relationship, maybe that's a week or longer, with your franchise sales personnel or franchisor, whoever you're dealing with. So for me to come in, if I get involved as an attorney, things kind of restart. I have to deal with the franchisor's attorney, and usually both of us are not as plugged into the sales process as maybe we should be or could be. So it's kind of like starting over, and usually a lot less is negotiable when there's 2 attorneys at the table, as opposed to having a salesperson you're dealing with, right? You can get better deals trying to work with a salesman as opposed to an attorney, in my experience. And that's true even when I'm on the other side of the table working with the franchisor, when I'm representing a franchisor. If I'm taking lead in negotiating, there's usually not very much on the table. But if I'm not involved in the sales process, and then the salesman or the executive or whomever comes to me with the deal already done, and then I got to review it, obviously there's already some terms in there that have been agreed to that I have to find a way to make happen. So it's the same for my franchisee clients, is that you've probably built that rapport. You have a much better chance dealing with a franchisee or franchisor salesperson as opposed to their attorney. So I'm much better in the background and assisting you, and that's what we do in our typical franchise review package. Is I'll be available to you for calls and emails during that negotiation process, but I won't be taking lead with you in that negotiation. I can certainly be on calls if you like me to, but just be prepared to continue those negotiations with the franchisor that you had before you even retained our services. So after negotiations, if you feel like maybe they push back on some terms a little too hard, or they weren't willing to accept a proposal that we sent them initially, then the next step obviously is to call your attorney, sit down with us. Let's figure out how we can re-strategize an approach to the franchisor, maybe put together a counter proposal to them to see if we can get it across the finish line for you and secure those modifications. And that's going to be unique to your situation and what the deal is and that was potentially on the table. And then after that, if you have secured some modifications with the franchisor will typically draft an addendum or an amendment to the franchise agreement. They're usually 2, maybe 3 pages long, very, very specific, not a lot of fluff there. And they'll send it to you, right? So you can review it and sign it with your franchise agreement. Send it to us when we're representing you. Otherwise, don't send it to me, please. But send it to me if we're your attorney. Send it over. Let's look at it. Let's make sure that it is changing what you expect it to change. Let's make sure that there's no other details that we have to clarify. Usually they're not trying to slip anything in there unusual, but I've had some instances where I thought the wording was a little too ambiguous maybe, or could be clarified a bit better, and then we can just modify it and make sure that it fits what everyone has agreed to. So it's real low level, not too difficult there, and there's usually not much conflict. And then that's essentially the franchise review process that we undertake here at Reidel Law Firm. The typical timeline for our review is, so once we get the franchise review document in our hand and start reviewing, we usually wrap it up and get you the summary review letter within 5 business days. If it's going to be a little bit shorter or a little bit longer, we'll tell you we'll give you an ETA when we start. But that's about average, is 5 business days. And then after we send you the summary review letter, we'll allow you, you'll have as much time as you need to review it. Write down your questions. That could be a day, could be a week or something, whatever. We'll work with you. But we'll need to schedule a conference call, right? We'll need to schedule a time for us to chat with you, address your questions, address your concerns, make sure that you understand everything, you're prepared to move on to your negotiation stage. That can be done at your convenience, not very difficult. But depending on how quickly you turn around, we'll have that conference call. And then after that, the negotiations can vary from a day or 2 later to a week or 2 after we've had the summary review letter in your hand. So that part is very hard to tell you. It really depends on you and the franchisor and how the negotiations go. But usually, I'd say probably the typical timeline for our project is we wrap it up in 2 weeks from start to finish, maybe 3 if there's prolonged negotiations with the franchisor. So it's a very simple process. We're very efficient at it. We do it all the time. So it's not like you're not going to have any long delays or anything. But keep that in mind. Sometimes we have folks who will call our firm and will want a review done like the next day. They're like, hey, we're signing our franchise agreement. We need to know what's in it. That's like tomorrow, or they send it to us Friday and they want it Monday, right? Yeah. So it's not going to happen. I'm sorry. So we don't do 24-hour turnaround. Not on our flat fees for sure. But just that gives you an idea how long you should expect it to last, when you need to start preparing. So once you get the franchise disclosure document in hand from the franchisor will have to wait at least 14 days before you're allowed to sign it. That's under federal law, FTC franchise rule. So they will tell you probably, hey, you need to sign it in 14 days or 15 days after you get it in hand. I've had some franchisors who try to push that harder than others, but frankly, it's a car salesman tactic, right? You are the buyer, you're the one that controls the timeline. In my experience, the franchisor probably won't walk away from the deal even if you miss that deadline. But don't feel like you're squeezed into a specific timeline from the franchisor. Take your time to read it. Take your time to work with a counselor or a consultant or something, so you understand it, you feel comfortable moving forward. Don't let these artificial timelines put you in a bad deal, right? Leap before you look. So lastly, I just want to mention, with our projects here at Reidel Law Firm, we do everything flat fee. And what we do is we look at what the project is. We'll give you a quote and the flat fee price for what that project is. It's going to be based on what the complexity, what type of matter it is in particular, and really how much time will take to get it done. So call us today if you're looking at buying a franchise and you need someone to assist you in reviewing those franchise documents, or if you're moving into a deal with the franchisor and you just want another pair of eyes on it to get some insight into the system. Give us a call. We can help you. And there'll be details below in the description about how you can reach out to us. And look forward to hearing from you.